Hello there.
Hello, hello.
Do you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, George R. Martin taking a pretty big swipe at the showrunners of hmm,
All right.
what else?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn
Oh,
Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Lord of the Rings. I am joined, as always, by your host with the most, the producer and writer of Ringers Lord of the Fans, a contributor to the published book series, The People's Guide to J.R.R. Tolkien, Mr. Clifford Broadway.
well, hello. What a magnanimous introduction. As always, I trust that Justin Sewell has been taking good care of himself since last week, and I trust that all of you beautiful people in the audience have been doing really good. Welcome back after a big Memorial Day weekend here in the United States of America. And
That's
now
right.
we're here on another Tuesday at theonering.net. This is your destination for the fan community that is absolutely dedicated to the words and the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. And this all volunteer showcase of a community has been run by you guys, fans, just lots of volunteer fans who've come into the fold to help us build a little online world where we can share our love and enthusiasm of the professor and his wonderful works. Now, also, it turns out that his works have been adapted a few times into board games, radio adaptations, radio plays, television, motion pictures, video games. Maybe those things can keep spinning on and on. There
Fan
are endless
films,
Oh, yes,
bootleg
fan films.
animated films. I mean,
Oh,
we've
yes,
learned
yes,
so much about the
yes.
history of adaptations just
So
this
many.
year. Just in the last few months, I was blown away when we talked about how Rankin and Bass just went ahead and animated their own movie with independent of copyright. That all
They
got
just
sorted and settled after some
they went ahead
lawsuits.
and did it. And you know what? How funny. Dodging lawsuits, they ended up with the Peabody Award. Prestigious for adding to the cultural arts in motion picture history. How very cool. Now, you know what? Things go a little bit weird when you're trying to track all the dotted lines between when Professor Tolkien was alive and when he sold the rights to United Artists and where we are now with the Embracer Group. And here at Torn Tuesday, we have done our very, very best to parse through the details and to help you guys understand everything in layman's terms as much as I can barely struggle to understand them myself. So we're going to continue apace at doing that and helping bring you guys the information and reflect and analyze on what it means as more adaptations of J.R.R. Tolkien's work continue now to come down the pipeline.
Look, context is king. If 20
Absolutely.
years ago content was king, context is king, and we're here to give you the
Yes.
context you need to
Yes.
receive all of the latest news that you keep hearing, and hopefully
Mm.
the context that we can add to your brain can help you be a more informed fan. And so,
Indeed.
to that end, before we get into all the latest news, and we have so much to talk about.
Oh my
Anduril coming
goodness.
back to the big screen. We got Rings of Power news. We've got so much to
Woo!
talk about, but real
Good stuff.
quick, I wanted to have a brief discussion, just briefest discussion. Cliff, you mentioned it's the Memorial Day. Historically, this has been the one of the biggest, if not the biggest, weekend for cinema box office. For the last 50 years, Memorial Day was the kickoff of summer, and you could expect the biggest box office numbers. Memorial Day is historically when all the Star Wars movies were released. That's what I'm talking
Mm.
about. So when you
Yes.
hear about this doom and gloom that this weekend's Memorial Day box office was at the lowest in 30 years. I don't want to get into that because it's a whole separate discussion that has to do with studio stuff. But as it relates to Lord of the Rings, this conversation that people are having about box office, I am glad, and I said this 5 years ago, I said this 4 years ago, and I said this 2 years ago. I am glad that Amazon has the rights to Lord of the Rings, because Amazon has the money to say, we don't care about box office. We're putting it on Prime. Prime Video is free with your Prime free shipping subscription. I appreciate that we are not in this box office race constantly of Lord of the Rings being held up against all the other numbers. Now, we've talked a lot about ratings, and that's partially to give you the context to know how you should think about the show and how it was received. That's all.
You know, I find it interesting that there's so much doom and gloom around Furiosa, and I'll tell you one quick anecdote. And maybe this might not count for other smaller towns and cities across the country. Here in Los Angeles, when I went to see Furiosa twice, the entire crowd in both IMAX cinemas crowded to the gills. Not an empty seat in the house. Not even the bad seats that strain your neck in the front row. Everyone was there. There was great applause. There were people who applauded the Joker and Lady Gaga trailer. Crazy energy. And everybody was there for Furiosa. So I don't understand the headlines saying, oh, it did terrible, because it seems to be doing gangbusters here.
And let's not forget, historically, Hollywood has used Memorial Day weekend to launch family-friendly fare. Again, Star Wars is a PG or PG-13 rated movie.
Jurassic Park also. Yeah. Memorial Day releases. Yeah.
It is the weekend. Furiosa is very much rated R. So this is the biggest rated R
very much so.
Box office Memorial Day ever. And that's how you should think about the context. Ignore what people are saying it's the lowest Memorial Day in 30 years. It's because there wasn't any big release that was PG-13 that teenagers could go without an ID.
The only other family film against Furiosa was the Garfield movie, and that was not targeted at the teenager PG-13 audience at all.
Right. So yeah, there was a giant chunk of the normal holiday movie-going audience that just didn't have a movie to go see. So anyway, I don't want to get into that. I just want to say I'm thankful that we don't have to deal with box office numbers too much, and with Lord of the Rings. And I'm glad Amazon has the rights, and I'm glad Warner Brothers is making more movies, and I'm glad that these movies are being positioned even at this early stage as not as big trilogies like the last two trilogies that we got. Every single communication from Warner Brothers has been, this is a single movie. This is an independent movie. This is a single story. Do not expect big, bombastic war to break out in these movies. And of course, with Rohirrim coming out this Christmas, that's an anime movie, and that's a very different category of film. So anyway, I just like the idea that we're not there's no apples to apples comparison with Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is on its own island. It won all the awards. It made all the box office. It made $6 billion at the box office. It won a record number of Academy Awards. It doesn't need to play that game anymore. It's just sitting back and telling great stories. And that's what we're here to tell, great stories. But the big news this weekend, Cliff, was it was the big birthday weekend, of course, of Saruman, Mr. Christopher Lee, who would have been 102 this yesterday. And then, of course, Ian McKellen, sprightly 85 years old, the big 85.
Fabulous milestone for Ian. That's great stuff.
Cliff, you used to work with Ian running his website, McKellen.com, 25 years ago. Can you tell us any stories of this wonderful man who is still putting on 6 shows a week in the West End of London.
I
How does he
I
have the
can
stamina?
I can tell you that he's a vegetarian, and he's an amazing, amazing talent to watch on stage. It is different from watching his film work. And personally, he is invigorated by stage work more than he ever is by working on motion pictures. There is, I don't know, there's something about, oh, I just lost my lamp. Too bad. There's something about being live on stage. And I personally can attest to that as a stage actor myself. When you are there in front of hundreds and hundreds of people in a live audience, and you're working organically with your other actors and actresses on stage, every day something is different, or something is slightly nuanced in a different way. And the audience brings different energy every day. And I am amazed at the fact that at 85, he's playing Falstaff and he's up there on stage for a 3 hour show. What's even more surprising is sometimes they do 2 shows a day. I mean, whoa, that's really, really remarkable that he's doing 2 shows a day. But then look at George Miller. How old is he? He's 75 or 76, and he's directing people on these wild stunt rigs, driving through the desert, highly dangerous stunts. And there's George Miller on the camera rig, going with them, doing crazy stuff. So it just goes to show, as I have now entered I've gently entered my decade of the 50s, but you can be in your 70s, 80s, and beyond, and you can be at the top of your game with the most unbelievable energy. And I think that good, clean living, believe it or not, Ian McKellen, I think, is an example, one of those rare examples of a theater actor who actually has gotten a lot further in life because of good, clean living. There's no, you know, I mean, there hasn't
So
been.
that begs the question, Cliff.
It's like,
Fans want
what
fans
would you
want to
like?
know.
Would you like to have a cocktail, or would you like to have orange juice and granola? And Ian McKellen is the person who would take health food over, toxic things. He's a healthy guy. Such a healthy man. He takes exceptional good care of himself, and his energy when he's on stage is significantly different. It enlivens him. And I think I understand. I do personally understand what that's like.
Cliff,
Really.
respond to someone in the chat room who says, "Yeah, health and orange juice and some money." But you knew him before he was a huge, huge star, before X
Yes.
Men. So
Before
before the
X-Men.
money, he was
Hmm.
healthy.
Yes, absolutely. Before that, I mean, he was, I mean, he had a little small part playing in an Arnold Schwarzenegger film called The Last Action Hero. Remember that? And after that, he was still, really in the Royal Shakespeare Company, and everything in his life was RSC. He had already won the Tony Award for his Broadway portrayal of Salieri in Amadeus, opposite the great Tim Curry. And he had broken over to American shores at that point in the very, very late 70s, in the early 80s, with the Peter Schaffer play, Amadeus. Now, even though he had broken into the American marketplace and won his Tony Award, nobody knew who he was, and he was really interested in getting into film. So he got involved with a little thing that Bill Condon was doing about director James Whale, the director of Frankenstein, who was an openly gay director who had his own difficult personal troubles while trying to work at Universal Studios to get the Frankenstein film made. So here's Brendan Fraser and Ian McKellen together in Gods and Monsters. And all of a sudden, there was buzz. Suddenly, people who had ignored Ian McKellen for winning the Tony Award and for being in the Schwarzenegger film, suddenly everyone in the industry was completely lit up like a Christmas tree. And Gods and Monsters was the moment when he got all the attention from Fox and Bryan Singer to be Magneto. And that was when he got all the attention from Peter Jackson and Philippa and Fran to be Gandalf. But it was because of working with Bill Condon on Gods and Monsters. And he was working really hard, and we were. No, the webmaster at the time, I was working for the webmaster, Keith Stern. And everything that we were doing at McKellen.com was embroiled in Academy Award campaign for his nomination for that role for Gods and Monsters. And everything just snowballed after that. I mean, the merchandise we were selling, with him drawing Gandalf t-shirts and signing it with his name, all the stuff that happened after, the Magneto announcement and the Gandalf announcement, everything just snowballed. It became a whole different, wonderful world. But I will
It,
admit that when I met him early on, and most of Americans didn't know him, I thought that he was the most charming and erudite and soft-spoken gentleman. And we had no idea the trajectory that things were going to go early, early on. But here we are now, all this time later. And I
so final.
congratulate you, Sir Ian. I congratulate you. And my hat is off to you. And I say happy birthday to you, good sir, here on our live show. And everyone here at the OneRing.net wishes you well. I'm just amazed at his longevity, but I'm not surprised that he can run around on stage 6 hours a day, two performances a day, matinee and then nighttime show, and he's on his feet running around bonkers as Falstaff. I'm not surprised that he has the guts and he's got the stamina to do it because he
All
takes
right.
such
Well,
good care of
Cliff,
himself. He
as
really
an
does.
insider, as an insider to McKellen, does he have the stamina to reprise his role as Gandalf in the next 2 years?
Absolutely, but you see, the problem that happened with The Hobbit is that the Hobbit films were offered to him, and it wasn't the most enticing thing because he wants to be on stage,
But
not,
we're gonna explain why
but
that
to,
has improved later in the show.
it has, yeah,
But
true, true. I'm glad
just
you are. I'm glad you
from
want
a
to talk about that.
health
But
point, do you
yeah, oh
believe
yeah,
with 100% of your chest
yes, I do.
that
Yes, I
McKellen
do.
is 100% ready to go for Gandalf?
Absolutely. He is ready to go, but would he want to? No, this is the real question. His capability is not diminished. Not at all.
Well, that's a different
And to,
discussion. Well, so we'll get
but
into
I'm going
that
to
in a
boil it
few.
down so we have this distinction very clear. I know that he's willing and ready to go, and he's very healthy and ready to go. But in terms of larger scale career moves, what would he want to do it for when he's already done Gandalf 6 times? What would he want to do it for is the
Well,
question.
that's a
So,
different that's a different discussion
different
for
angle
another
of that.
day. But happy
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
birthday
Yes.
and again, Chris Ian McKellen turned 85, and it was Christopher Lee's birthday yesterday. And Cliff, you won't believe this, I found
Oh
a
my goodness.
video of Christopher Lee. Check
Show
this
me.
out.
Show me.
This is Christopher Lee. I would like to congratulate the One Ring Net. I would like to thank them for putting on the website this competition, which has its main purpose promotion of my recent album, which
Well, it's a 10-minute video, but we don't need to show the whole thing. So, Cliff, I just thought you'd
Wow.
enjoy that. Christopher
Wow.
Lee
That's so cool.
shouting out the OneRing.net buying for fans of J.R.R. Tolkien. Moving
That's
on,
very, very
I want to
cool.
respond to people in the chat room who keep asking where I got my shirt. Let's.
I got my lamp fixed over here.
Well, let me. Where am I? There I am. So, you guys like
Oh,
this?
I remember
I
that shirt.
want you for the Battle of Five Armies.
I
This
remember
was-
that shirt.
This was our 2014 San Diego Comic-Con exclusive shirt in celebration of the third Hobbit movie, of course, called Battle of the Five Armies. And this was our exclusively designed shirt. We only sold it at Comic-Con. And so will we ever print it again? I don't know. It is our 25th anniversary. And this is what I wanted to ask you guys. Is anyone in the chat room artistically gifted? Because I am tempted.
Oh, here we go.
I am tempted to put up a public contest to design our Comic-Con exclusive t-shirt for this year. And it could be based on the Rohirrim. It could be a 25th anniversary torn shirt. It could be based on the Rings of Power. And this is, of course, the Comic-Con badge for Rings of Power, which we expect to be repeated again this summer. So, is anyone in the chat room artistically gifted? Because I need to figure out how how we would technically do a contest. I need to find a way where people can either hashtag the contest or maybe upload to a server that we can look at. I want the fans to design our 25th anniversary t-shirt,
Oh,
Comic-Con
cool. Okay.
exclusive. And
Oh,
and to
yeah.
that end, I was going through some old boxes and I found some other Comic-Con t-shirts like Why So Precious? Why So Precious? This was fun. This was before the Hobbit movie came out. This is when The Dark Knight came out. Remember, we had that shirt. And any sports ball fans, dwarves. That was a fun shirt.
Yeah, that was good.
We've got. Oh yeah, look at this one, Misty Mountains. Any connoisseurs of fine beverage, fine cold beverage, would recognize that logo. Of course, there was the Obey Sauron tribute
Well,
shirt.
that's a classic.
That was
That's a
one of our
classic.
best-selling shirts of all time.
Because it's a
Two
spoof on a classic Shepherd Fairy design.
2 years ago, before the Rings of Power came out, we knew that Durin would be featured, so we made Durin's Folk Family Reunion T-shirts. Look at that. It's supposed to say 2022 at the bottom. I think this was a test print, but Durin's Folk Family Reunion. That was fun. Of course, there's the Vote Bilbo. We made Vote Bilbo shirts when Bilbo won the MTV award. Someone designed this, and we hit him up like, "Hey, can we take this to Comic-Con?" So we did. Sauron on the Iron Throne.
Ooh.
One throne to rule them all. That is a shiny metallic ink as well. You can't see it on screen, but that was fun. So yeah, we've had this was a New York Comic Con exclusive shirt for Desolation of Smug. Wonderful design of artistic interpretation of the dragon, and of course.
Ooh.
Who doesn't want to drink some Shirebuck's second breakfast blend?
I'm wearing my Straight Outta Mordor shirt today,
So,
right? Remember this? Was this
Yeah.
ours?
Yeah.
This was ours too. Straight Outta Mordor.
so I need to figure out how to put up a contest and how to take entries because it is our
I
25th
agree.
anniversary. We started in 1999. 2024 is our 25th anniversary. It's our silver anniversary, our silver jubilee, and so we want to come to Comic-Con with a community-driven effort to design our T-shirt. So yes, that is a long way of saying we're coming to Comic-Con. So is Amazon. We expect big things out of Rings of Power, like we did 2 years ago. That's all I want to talk about Comic-Con right now. So if anyone, you can text the hotline down at the bottom of the screen, 530-643-7636. That's the hotline. You can text me if you have any ideas for a T-shirt design, if you can sketch it out, or if you have an idea of like how I can have people submit things. So when does the design contest begin? Again, as soon as I figure out how to technically do it. I need to maybe it's just a hashtag, but not everybody has Instagram anymore, or maybe they do. I don't know. So yeah, let's get our creative brains going and come up with something fun and friendly for our silver anniversary. Or
It
Rings
is
of Power
appropriate. I think
based.
it's most of, yeah, or Rings of Power based, or Silmarillion based, or Hobbit, or Lord of the Rings, or anything. But I think it going into the hands of the creative people in our fan community is the best way to do it. It's the best way to celebrate you folks and how talented you are. And I love it. I just love that idea that people who are fans are contributing and bringing their energy to the table. And yeah, Justin, making it into a contest where we can see concepts and designs and everybody online can vote on the ones they like best. Is that how we're thinking about setting up some kind
I
of a
don't know.
thing?
We'll figure out later, but we've got so much news to talk about, including Viggo
Well, I'm
Mortensen
down.
and Anduril. But next up, I just wanted to give a shout out to Brussels Comic Con this weekend, who put
Oh,
up this
yes.
wonderful tribute to Bernard Hill. Um, this is just wonderful. This is just wonderful. They had fans sign a guest book that they sent to the family. Of course, they had King Theoden's sword on display. The love for King
I think the name of
Theoden.
that sword is Herugrim. I think that's the name of the sword, but I better double. Herugrim. Maybe I'm wrong. Are you guys? Let me know if in the chat I'm wrong. But the name of King Theoden's sword. I'm gonna look it up in just a second. But I'm pretty sure off the top of my head that I knew that from somewhere in the back recesses of my mind.
And guys, you won't believe this. I found the variety, and it's oversized. I mean, look how big this is. This is a
Yeah,
giant.
it's Herugrim. Yep, I was right.
This is the issue of Variety. I found an issue of Variety, and guess what? This is on newsstands right now. On newsstands right now
Oh,
at
that's
your
so
local
beautiful.
bookstore.
Go to
And
Barnes
there-
and Noble. You can grab that. Yeah.
There is a full-page tribute to Bernard Hill,
Oh,
courtesy
beautiful.
of
Beautiful.
New Line Cinema. Look at that full-page tribute to Bernard Hill, right there in this issue of Variety. Go to Barnes and Noble. Go to
Beautiful.
your favorite local bookstore. This was at a local bookstore in LA called Skylight Books.
Yeah, Skylight.
But
yeah,
yeah,
they're great.
Barnes
They
and
have
Noble
everything.
might have these. You can see the cover is "We Were the Ones." This is what you want to look for.
That is super
'cause
cool.
That's wonderful.
So this was the Brussels fan convention.
Yeah, this was the Brussels fan convention that
Well done.
that,
Well done.
that
Very well done.
Bernard Hill was supposed to attend, but got sick at the last minute. Moving on,
Oh,
there's
dear.
this was a fun little story that came up on my feed, and I just wanted to play it. Let's play this.
Okay, let me see this.
Here we go.
What about Side by Side with a Friend? Oh, is it Return of the King? Yes, Return of the King.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about Side by Side with a Friend?
No,
I've
that's
actually
not
seen
from
that
Return of the
line
King.
tattooed countless times on
from the Two
fans
Towers.
around the world. It's gone, wow. And in fact, I think I even signed something because I saw the tattoo and it was Legolas and Gimli. And that line, what about Side by Side with a Friend? And then he said, could you just send me your signature so I can tattoo it underneath? Because he had Gimli's. He had John Rhys Davis on one side and me on the other. What about Side by Side with a Friend?
That's great. Well,
Ah,
right, this
isn't that cute?
Orlando, everybody involved with this, with the Lord of the Rings, is continues to be a gift for fans, and we're all just one fandom. But and speaking of
You're right, Daisy
fandom,
Kim. I was wrong. It's the Return of the King at the Black Gate. It's at the Black Gate where that happens. Okay, not on the ramparts of Helm's Deep. Not on the Deeping Wall. In
someone
the Two Towers.
mark the time code.
Okay.
It is 5:28 p.m. on Tuesday, May 28th, and Clifford Broadway is wrong.
And many times over. Oh, many times over have I been wrong.
All right,
Believe
well,
me, I've got no ego about that, bro.
Speaking of fans, Viggo Mortensen announced that he reused Aragorn's sword in his
Oh,
new
he did.
movie, The Dead Don't Hurt, because it's really good.
Yes.
When the actor and director of this movie, he wrote, acted, and directed this movie that is out this week. He said he needed a sword for a sequence in his Western. He had the perfect one sitting at home. So, folks, you can see this weekend in theaters, The Dead, Don't Hurt. And you can see
Nice.
Anduril wielded by Viggo Mortensen on screen again.
Oh gosh, where is it playing? I'm gonna look it up right now to see where it is playing in Los Angeles.
So it is definitely, it is a full-on Western. In fact, who's our producer on this show? We need to book Viggo and talk about this movie. We need to see
Yes.
this movie and then have a discussion about it first. Because his last movie that he directed and starred and scored and wrote was incredible, called Falling. And so this is his second directorial effort.
Well,
So this
guess
is
what?
a
It opens in
wonderful.
2 days. It opens in 2 days
Yeah, that's
here
what I
in Los
said.
Angeles.
It
Yeah,
opens this weekend.
this weekend. Yeah, okay. And it'll be
A
playing at all
sword in
AMC theaters everywhere. The Dead Don't Hurt.
uh
Nice.
yeah. What do you mean a sword in a western? You know the old west, like it took like 2 minutes to reload a gun. Swords were the weapon of choice in the west. Swords and axes and arrows and lances.
Wow.
Of course there's sword. So man,
Wow.
I really need to see this movie so I can be in the theater and say, hey, I know that sword. So I'm looking forward to that. Look, I'm excited because Vigo telling GQ today that Aragorn's sword Anduril is in his possession and in his new movie because it's a really good sword. This means that he still has affection for Aragorn the character.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah.
And another quote from this same article, Cliff, that people were talking about. GQ asks, when The Hobbit first announced, you said that you would return to play Aragorn if the story was right and the character actually did something. With the recently announced The Hunt for Gollum, which does involve Aragorn, would you consider returning? Do you want to know what he said, Cliff?
Tell me. Tell me.
Viggo Mortensen says, sure, I don't know exactly what the story is and I haven't heard. Maybe I'll hear about it eventually. I like playing that character. I learned a lot playing that character. I enjoyed it a lot. I would only do it if it was right for it in terms of, the age I am now and so forth. I would only do it if I was right for the character, if it was right for the character. I would be silly not to do it otherwise.
Well, that's very encouraging. That is a very encouraging thought, as Ian McKellen would say. A very encouraging thought.
Cliff, as you just said, Ian McKellen has the stamina of a rock star.
Yep.
I'm thinking Mick Jagger type stamina. Ian McKellen can definitely come back as
Mick
Gandalf.
Jagger has never had the healthy living habits that Ian
he
does.
hasn't.
So, okay.
You know who else?
Just say that.
You know who else lives a healthy life? Because I just saw him a few weeks ago here in Los Angeles at an event.
Tell me.
Viggo Mortensen is looking healthy. He's looking fit. He's looking
he's
sharp.
extremely healthy. Oh, my God. He takes better care of himself than anybody, than the Liver King. Okay, I mean, the Liver King is a joke. I'm obviously making a joke, but Viggo is extremely, extremely well preserved.
And let's not forget,
but that's
he's
because
like
he's so
80
healthy.
years old. He's like 80 years old in the Hunt.
Oh my
for
God,
Gollum.
he is not. Viggo is not 80 years old. Stop
in the Hunt for Gollum, his character Aragorn is 80 years old.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. But in real life, how old is Viggo is my question.
He's not 80 years old.
Okay, well, thank you.
McKellen's
All right.
80 years old, 85
McKellen's
years old.
85. All right.
I'm telling you right now, having laid eyes on the man himself, Viggo, you put a wig on him, you put the leather on, and he's straight back into the character. I'm telling you, Viggo is ready to go back. He's putting the sword in his own movie. He's communicating to the world. Put me in, coach. I got another game in me. He just said that to GQ.
Yep.
So
he did.
Warner Brothers.
He said, "Put me back in the ring, Peter Jackson. Put me back in the ring."
Director Andy Serkis, call Viggo now. Get on his schedule. Don't let him book anything else. I don't want to hear about scheduling conflicts. There were no scheduling conflicts when it has to do with Viggo Mortensen. Clear your schedule. Get him on board. Lock him up.
I love it.
Send him a check.
I love it.
You know what? He probably would even do it just on a handshake. Okay? Like,
he would.
Viggo is 60.
Oh my gosh, you're funny.
And he looks the part. He still looks the part.
He's 65 or 66. I think he will be 66 in October. Okay, his birthday's in the middle of October, so I think he's 65 now. But yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Bring Viggo in. And do you think, look, Brent Spiner plays Lieutenant Commander Data, the android, and he's supposed to not age at all, while everybody else around him gets older. But then they bring Brent Spiner back into second, third season of Picard on Paramount Plus, and it is distinctly obvious that Brent Spiner looks like an older android. He just really does, and that's just the way it is, okay? If they can get away with that, then by all means they could put Vigo in and say, "Hey, you're playing an 80-year-old, and now you're really 80."
Well,
so
let me ask. Let's ask the chat, and let me ask
Let's do
your
this.
opinion. Let me ask your opinion, Cliff.
right?
And let
Yeah,
me ask
okay.
the chat: do
Okay.
you think is the fandom ready to walk into a dark movie theater for The Hunt for Gollum, starring an older Viggo Mortensen playing the same character? Are you prepared
Yes.
to go back with?
Yes.
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 No
Yes.
hesitation.
Yes.
No hesitation.
No hesitation at all. At all. Are you kidding? I mean, we don't need to, cast one of the, Skarsgård brothers to come in and replace him, which is obviously where the conversation would go. And no one wants to do that. Bring Vigo back. Period. Hello, Warner Brothers? Hello, knock knock. Is this thing
You
on?
have, guy Warner's. You have
Bring
a
Vigo back.
home run here. Vigo is telling you publicly
Yes.
he's ready to come back. McKellen
Do you know-
is doing 6 nights a week on stage. He has the stamina. He has the stamina to do it.
It's amazing. It's amazing how hardcore it is to work in the Royal Shakespeare Company, be doing those stage shows
And
with
look,
that kind of vigor, night after night after night.
so
It's
I
amazing.
so Daisy in the chat room. Daisy Kim in the chat room wants to know, Cliff, what do you feel about the de-aging? Do you feel like they would need to digitally de-age the actors, or are we as fans prepared to accept how they look right now in the roles that we love them for?
What was the X-Men film? Was it Days of Future Past, where they
Yeah.
de-aged Ian and Sir Patrick Stewart?
For that one
And
scene
people-
in the
Yep.
past.
Yeah. And people were just like, Well, you know what? This is years and years and years later, and the technology is probably far better to try and do it. But if they are going to do any little bit of de-aging, I don't know. I don't know if they even need to. Look, it's fine by me to see Gandalf the Grey with a few more wrinkles. It is totally fine by me to see a ranger of the north caught off his guard because he's running around scrabbling in the wilderness chasing after Smeagol. I'm down. I'm totally down. And in terms of a temporary...
he
Wait,
was de-aged in X-Men 3. That was a long time ago. I don't think he was
Okay.
de-aged in Days of Future Past, which is the
Okay,
one
might
where
be
there
my
was
mistake.
like both the Michael Fassbender and
Yeah.
Ian McKellen.
I thought that was the one where they had them look like...
No,
but,
that was
hey, maybe
that
I'm
was
wrong.
that was a long time ago. Clip's wrong
It was a long
twice
time ago.
in this show. So I don't think they
let's
need
keep
to
count
de-age.
now. Sure.
Well, yeah. Ding. I don't think they need to
Put an X
de-age
on
anyone.
the screen.
I'm telling you, having seen Vigo in person, he's fit as a fiddle. He could he could
Agreed.
still outrun the dwarf across the Highlands. Not
Agreed.
saying that there is a dwarf in the Hunt for Gollum, but I don't know. Orlando Bloom.
know,
We just showed a clip from Orlando Bloom. We just showed an interview with Viggo Mortensen, and we just celebrated Ian McKellen's birthday. I'm telling you, the stars are aligning to get the band back together.
I believe it. And honestly, like I was just about to say the same thing that you were saying, Justin. Was just about to say that in terms of suspension of disbelief, which is all that we require to have to enjoy watching a play or a film, we need to, as an audience, the only thing that is collectively required of us is that temporary suspension of disbelief. And we can do it. I think that we could do that just fine without needing the de-aging digital process.
By the
I
way,
think we'd be fine.
I don't think they I don't think they de-aged Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in the brand new Wolverine and Deadpool movie. And he's supposed to be playing
no.
younger Wolverine, older Wolverine.
nope.
We already got the post-apocalyptic Wolverine, the one where he died at the end, right?
Yep.
So
we got that already.
Look, I think fandom is just ready to return to. So, I wanted to go back to your comment, Cliff, about Ian McKellen having
Hmm.
some hesitations and some issues with the production on The Hobbit. And everybody that's watched the behind the scenes on The Hobbit knows that there were some struggles with Ian McKellen because he's a theater actor, he's a stage actor. He wants to act against and with people, and on a green screen stage by himself.
In the same moment, in the same space, in the organic moment, because that is what acting is on stage. When you're with people, creating energy on stage in front of live people. That's what it's all about.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring up this article from Befores and After, which is a visual effects thing. And this long article, and I'll link to this on our socials after the show. But this long article is on the new Weta Effects Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movie that has everybody shocked with how good it looks. And
it was a deliciously good film. That was a really good film. Enjoyed it a lot.
It's not only a
Very
good film narratively and performance-wise, but it looks so real. And one of the reasons, many of the reasons that they go to in this long article, in this in-depth VFX look, is how they have improved the technology of Gollum and digital acting, so you don't need to be on a green screen stage. And people and actors can just be in the forest performing alongside all the other actors. And let me show you this video real quick. This is an incredible. It's a short little video. Hold on.
Oh yes, please show this.
With Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes had this particular vision, and the only place that could create that was Weta. Virtual filmmaking and motion capture. They bring digital pixels to life based on the actor's soul. The actor's performances combined with Weta's visual effects really bring something new to the table. It was absolutely spectacular.
Let me just bring that up. Look at that again. They are shooting in a forest.
The actor's soul bring digital pixels to
they
life
are shooting
based on
in a forest.
the actor's soul.
They're not
digital pixels to life based on the actor's soul.
Yeah, they're not in the volume projection tent. They're actually
they're not in
real environment.
Screen. They're in the real environment. And this is what Andy Serkis was talking about in the in the interview that we profiled a couple weeks ago. Andy Serkis said he was really excited to return to do this Gollum movie, specifically because the technology on Planet of the Apes had improved so much that he personally is excited about performing Gollum in an environment, on a real life location shoot, without all the markers and without all the green screen. He can just put on his suit and it captures his entire body movement rather than just his facial animation. And so that's what Andy is excited about. So I think that there is an incredible opportunity here to get Ian McKellen back, because they can actually make the film on the terms that Ian McKellen would want, which is real actors on a real stage, face to face.
Agreed.
No more green screen. And Andy called this out in the interview a couple weeks ago. Andy specifically said, we don't need to do those stupid soundstage shoots anymore. We can shoot on a fully built set. We can shoot on location with a digital character and your actors, and it just works. That's how far Weta has pushed the technology. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
That's another reason for Ian McKellen to say yes.
I get that. I get the connective tissue of what you're saying now. I get it. Well, I agree with everybody in the chat who says, color me intrigued. You know,
It says right here, on set capture of everything else VFX wise. The performance capture of the actors is clearly central to the creature work of the film, but just like any live action visual effects project, a whole range of additional surveying, data capture, and other set work was crucial to building up the necessary data the artist needs. So they made little stuffies made by Weta Workshop for lighting reference on set. Look, the point is Weta, specifically Weta Workshop and Weta Digital, have been improving the technology that they use on The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit to incredible advancements during the Planet of the Apes 4-movie series that basically Andy Serkis said, now is the time.
He did immediately. You know, it's funny that you hear hesitations from some actors like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to ask me. I don't think I've ever seen the material. I don't know. I don't know. And then you hear things from Viggo, who is literally not even going through his publicist, and he's telling out loud to the studios, I'm ready. Bring me on board. It's the opposite of prevaricating, which they often do when they're asked about it. Oh, do you want to be in this franchise? And they get cagey about it, and they answer by not answering, and they prevaricate. But this is the opposite. This is Viggo literally saying, I know that if I could be right for it, I would be delighted to do it. And that's an affirmation that the studio should pay attention to, because I guarantee you the hunt for Gollum will include Thranduil, Gandalf the Grey, Aragorn, Elrond, other characters and people that we know, like I've even suggested in a previous conversation on our live show right here. I've said, even though he's not in it, the Saruman character is trying to create his own rings. He's experimenting with ringcraft, and he's looking around trying to find the One Ring himself. So his character could be thrown into the mix to heighten the complications, even though, you know, all kinds of things could just happen in a really delightful, straightforward way.
And Cliff,
I'm excited by the possibility.
I believe on the show when it was first announced, The Hunt for Gollum, I believe you told me some of the characters that are definitely involved in the story, The Hunt for Gollum, as you know it.
Yes. Yeah. I just kind of went through a list of 4 of them. Yeah. Gandalf. Thranduil, the
Gandalf?
king of the Greenwood. Yeah. King of the Woodland Realm. So we've got Aragorn, Gandalf, Thranduil as the top 3 that are involved. I would assume if they're going to have a meeting of the White Council, maybe not. I don't know if the White Council needs to meet, but that would include Galadriel and Elrond as well.
There you go.
But them coming in to have a meeting about things might not be necessary. Other characters could come in as well. What if they do flashbacks? What if they do flashbacks to
let's not talk
things,
about flashbacks,
you know?
because they haven't really done flashbacks except for the intro to Return of the King, which was a unique situation. But
yeah,
I found a clip that is mighty interesting. Let's listen to it, because I think, according to the press release,
Elrond's twins, Eladan and Elrohir. Yes,
that's right.
They could be in it too. Oh, cool. So, that's cool. I like that idea.
The other thing about this clip I'm about to show you is, according to the press release when The Hunt for Gollum was announced, the writers had already decided to make the movie. Philippa Boyens, Fran Walsh, Peter Jackson, Phoebe Gittins, Artie Papagiorgio had already started writing. They were already down a path when they called Andy and said, hey, we're going to do this. We want you to direct. So we believe that the script is further down a stage that then people may have thought originally. I think it's further down. And by the way, the studio announced that this is going to be out in 2 years. And that's how long it took Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, 2 years from script to screen. So they're going to start shooting this year, which means the script is probably halfway done. But in this clip, take every word for it literally, because I think we were given secret hints earlier this year about what, who, and what might be on tap to be part of the hunt for Gollum.
Where were we given secret hints? Oh, tell me, please tell me, where did we get secret hints from?
All right,
I want to know.
Listen up.
Let's go through the secrets.
Listen
Look at the secret
carefully.
hints. Okay, I'm excited. I want to learn more about this.
Okay.
Now, we mentioned, there's all these breadcrumbs of stories in the appendices, and War of the Rohirrim obviously is one that there's breadcrumbs. They're very tasty breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Are there any, as just a Tolkien book fan, are there any other stories you look at in the appendices and you think, oh gosh, that would be cool if someone made that someday?
Yes. There's quite a few. Yeah.
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 That's all you're going to say about
yeah.
that? I do.
Pause. Look how quickly she said yes.
And then change the subject. Oh my gosh.
Look how quick. So this is back in January, folks. Back in January,
okay.
the decision had already been made. So she already knew that this was happening. Let's continue.
Okay. What would you do?
I think a popular one is the Angmar War
Okay, I'm just
with
gonna
the
look
Witch
at-
King. Okay, yeah.
No, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so-
that feels big though. That feels like that's a big piece of storytelling.
Yeah, it is.
That'd
would
be
be.
big. That'd
yeah,
be big.
that's a fall of an entire kingdom, and I love seeing the Witch King in his armor. That's for sure.
It's a tricky one though. It is a tricky one. Because have we tread some of that path? I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. You'd have to go and have a really hard look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's some others in there. This one in particular, because everyone thinks of dragons as very heated.
Yeah.
And hot.
Yeah.
And fiery. There you go. There's a hint.
That's it.
Let's see if anyone gets what I'm meaning.
Yes.
So there are other types of dragons out there.
There are wars involving dragons.
Yes, or not necessarily wars involving dragons. There are other types of worms.
Ah, okay. All right. I'm catching what you're throwing. Yeah.
You reckon?
I think so.
Okay. Anyway, I've always thought that's interesting, and actually not outside of the world or the precursors to the Rohirrim.
Yeah.
Cliff?
The precursors to the War of the Rohirrim story. Wow.
Well, she was changing the subject there back to Rohirrim, but listen to that answer when she talks about what other stories could be told, and she's talking about other dragons and other fire-breathing worms.
They were called cold drakes. She's referring to the cold drakes.
Let's play it again.
I do. I love seeing the Witch King in his armor. That's for sure.
It's a tricky one, though. It is a tricky one. Because have we tread some of that path? I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. You'd have to go and have a really hard look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's some others in there. This one in particular, because everyone thinks of dragons as very heated.
Yeah.
And hot.
Yeah.
And fiery. There you go. There's a hint.
That's it.
Let's see if anyone gets what I'm meaning.
Yes.
So there are other types of dragons out there.
There are wars involving dragons.
Yes, or not necessarily wars involving dragons. There are other types of worms.
Ah, okay. All right. I'm catching what.
All right, Cliff.
Yep. Yes.
Break that out for me. What is she talking about? Other types of worms? What do we like? Could Hunt for Gollum include some drakes?
Cold
and some
drakes.
worms?
It could. Hey, look up the word cold drakes, Tolkien, and look up and see what you'll find. They were dragons that lacked the power of ability to breathe fire, like most infamous dragons, and Calagon, Glaurung, and Smaug. They lacked the ability to breathe fire. Nonetheless, they were strong foes with iron-hard scales, wicked claws, bold tails, and terrible fangs. It is unknown if they wielded the ability to breathe ice instead of fire. It is unknown. Though many did not survive the War of Wrath, at the end of the First Age, some escaped eastward and remained in the northern waste, the Grey Mountains, and the withered heath. And as the millennia passed, the cold drakes multiplied, and they became a serious threat to the dwarves in the late Third Age. Eventually, and this is what Matt is talking about, eventually war was declared. In Third Age 2589, Dain the First, king of Durin's folk, and his second son, Fror, were slain at the gates of their own hall by a gigantic cold drake. Yeah, so there could be all kinds of cold drakes added to the hunt for Gollum. There could be wildly interesting side characters brought in to pepper and sprinkle.
You just said something about the Grey Mountains. Did Gollum go to the Grey Mountains?
Do
we
Gollum
have a
go
map
to the
of where Gollum went?
You know what? I don't know that Gollum went to the Grey Mountains, but I think that he. Hold on, I think I've got a map. Let me pull out my Atlas of Middle-earth. I think she, the original cartographer, the wonderful creator of the Atlas of Middle-earth, Karen Wynne Fonstad, I think that she tracked the movements of Aragorn and Gollum during the hunt. Let me look it up real quick. Give me a second. I'll be right back.
All right. So while Cliff is looking up a map, because it should always start with a map.
Always.
Again, we're just recapping. We're reading between the lines, and we're trying to figure out how big and how small are they thinking for this movie. Obviously, from that response that we just heard, that she was kind of put off by the idea of telling another big war story, the battle for Angmar and Witch King and stuff like that. She kind of like brushed that off and said, that's too big, that's too heavy. We've already done battles. The perspective, according to some of the interviews that Peter Jackson and Andy Serkis have done in the last couple weeks, is they're looking for single movies. Not trilogies, not duologies. They want to tell single stories in a single movie. And so
Holy sugar. Gollum went all the way to Esgaroth upon the Long Lake, which is called Lake Town. He went all the way to Dale. He went all the way to the city of Dale, which we see summarily destroyed by Smaug in the opening sequence of An Unexpected Journey. At Dale was the settlement of human men who lived north of Lake Town, but outside the gates of Erebor, the Lonely Mountain, in case you guys remember. So here it is. Listen to this. During the 77 years between Bilbo's finding of the ring and Frodo's quest to destroy it, Sauron reestablished his power in Mordor. Balin attempted to recolonize Moria, which ultimately failed. Saruman turned wholly to evil. Aragorn undertook great journeys. Bilbo moved house to Rivendell, and Gollum went in search of the thief Baggins. Gollum left his mountain cave in Third Age 2944. And I'm looking at the map. She has a map here going all across through Mirkwood, up to Long Lake, up to Lake Town and Dale. And it says here that he went through to those areas. And then in 2951, which was 7 years later, Gollum's wanderings took him through Mirkwood, back. He was heading west toward the Shire, and then he was drawn toward Mordor. He lurked on the borders of Mordor for a while until he was captured in 3017. And later that year, he was allowed to leave, only to be caught again, that time by Aragorn. He was held in Mirkwood by Thranduil and was rescued by orcs who attacked the elves, and then ultimately Gollum reached Moria. So all this stuff is happening. She's got the map. Look at this. She's got the lines that are drawn that show where he went, up and down, north and east and west, across all the lands of Wilderland. It's all in here in detail. So yes, I knew she had a map of that. So when you're involving something that has that much wandering and that many years of time, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised that they could bring in, Gollum bumping into, other characters? What if Balin and his team are trying to reestablish Moria, and Gollum witnesses them being slaughtered by the orcs, and they discover the horrible Balrog is with them? What if, you know, oh
Or
my
what?
gosh, what I'm just thinking so
Oh
many
my God!
possibilities
The
of
hunt for
story.
the hunt for
So many
Gollum
possibilities.
is the story of Aragorn coming of age, right?
Yep.
And it is the hunt for Gollum is the story of Balin reclaiming Moria and and dealing with the Balrog.
Yes. Yep. Yep. It's all in there.
This
It's
is a
all,
huge movie. This
it's
is a
also
huge movie.
there's the horrible time of torture where Sauron is there in the physical room with Smeagol to intimidate him and drive the deepest fear of the universe into Smeagol to try to extract information from him. If we can imagine how really, really wonderful the riddle game was, that in an unexpected journey, Bilbo and Gollum bring the movie to a halt so that they can have a riddle game for over 15 minutes. And it's amazing. It's just like the book. Imagine another big, terrifying interrogation scene where Sauron is there trying to interrogate Gollum and get all this information from him. It could be the scariest stuff, and it could show us a new vision of how Weta would have visualized Sauron as, a walking, talking person who's having a conversation with Smeagol, and just great possibilities in this story. Really.
And let me just reiterate. What was the question that prompted Philippa Boyens to talk about drakes and worms?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
The question was,
Ooh.
what other stories in the books are worth exploring?
And she went to the Cold Drakes right away. Yep.
Right away.
Right away. Yep.
Dragons on her mind.
You know what? Maybe that's one of the other 2 or 3 films that they're going to do after The Hunt for Gollum. It'll be the Battle of the Dwarves versus the Cold Drakes. Something insane like that.
Is there a worm in the Rohirrim tale of Helm Hammerhand?
Say again. Ooh.
Is there a cold drake in the Battle of Helm Hammerhand for Helm's Deep?
No. No. The Cold Drakes never came down that far south.
Okay.
No.
So
they
again,
they harassed up in the Withered Heath in those mountains in the far, far north. Where was the northernmost kingdom of the dwarves? At that time, it was 2. There was the Iron Hills, and to the east of that was Erebor at the Lonely Mountain. So imagine 2 dwarf kingdoms up against cold drakes at the time. It could be a whole separate story, but any possible, yeah, you're right, Higgy baby. Never say never. If they want to be,
says there's cold
if they want to
drake
overlap
in
it, they could
Rohirrim's
Venn
tale.
diagram the whole thing if they want.
Fram and Scatha. Scatha, the cold drake, is part of the Rohirrim legend.
Oh, there is a cold drake, Fram and Scatha. All right. But is that actually part of the setting of the War of the Rohirrim?
So while he's looking up Scatha, I just want to say this is a hint of where the executive producer and co-writer of the brand new Hunt for Gollum, this is where her mind immediately went. And you saw how quickly she answered that question. So
yeah,
we can imply from back in January that work was already being done back in January, nearly 5 months ago. They knew the story that they wanted to tell. They knew that there's going to be a dragon or a worm involved in this story. And then it came out, and now Andy Serkis is back. And now Viggo has said he wants to come back. Orlando, he's just living life. He's got a new TV show. Like he's ready to come back if you'll have him. I personally need Lee Pace to return as Thranduil.
I would love to have Lee Pace return as Thranduil. But you're quite right, Robin Smallborough. It says here that little is told of Scatha's life before his appearance in the Third Age. He had made his lair in the southern slopes of the Grey Mountains, and he greatly troubled the dwarves and the woodmen living in the lands in the northern areas of Wilderland, stealing a great deal of their treasure in the manner of dragons in general, and he was slain by the Eotheod, Lord Fram. But this was an ancestor of Eorl the Young. These are ancestors of the Rohirrim. Centuries before they would migrate
Helm hand to
south,
hand.
and they centuries way before they would even move that far south from Wilderland
But
down
could
the
they
river
compress?
Anduin
Would you be okay
into
with
the
compressed
lands of
timeline?
Rohan.
Would you be okay with bringing that part of the legendarium up in time?
Yeah, I think that they would bring it back, and I don't mind any compression. Do you know why? Do you know why? I don't mind the compression. I kind of got used to it. Peter Jackson did a hell of a lot of compression, especially with that 17 years when Gandalf was gone. And the Rings of Power TV show is quite good at doing time compression. They do lots of compression of things along the historical timeline. So I don't mind. I'm used to that. It's okay. But here's why I think it'd be kind of cool. Listen to this. There was a dispute over the stolen treasure of the dragon Skatha. In his hoard, in his dragon hoard, was found a silver horn, the horn of Rohan that was later given to Meriadoc Brandybuck by Éowyn. So the dwarves had a claim on that horn, partially justified, as the horn of Rohan was said to be of dwarven making, but Fram, the ancestor of Eotheod, who actually was the great, great, great ancestors of all the Rohan characters we know, but Fram would not give them anything. Instead, he sent the dwarves a necklace made out of the dragon's teeth. It is supposed that the dwarves were insulted, and they went and killed him as a result. So, with a horn of Rohan coming in and dwarves killing men of Rohan, even though before they become Rohan, I think that'd be really cool and interesting. They could add all that stuff in. Yeah. There's plenty of stuff if they want to stuff the film with stuff.
So,
But,
as,
you know, the
yeah,
danger is, as always, how fast and loose they're going to do it with that.
Well, look,
You know.
I think that let's put a button on this. We
Okay.
have now
Okay.
determined that the filmmakers are intent on telling some stories that have to do with dragons that don't just breathe fire, and worms and other big creatures in the legendarium. And she just said it in context of what other stories could be told from the books and the appendices. She didn't respond with this answer to, like, are we going to see anything in Rohirrim? This was a question specifically about what other stories would you like to tell? And she was like, let's talk about dragons and worms.
Let's talk about cold drakes. Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, Hunt for Gollum is happening. So let's put.
Okay.
So again,
Okay.
the show is
Yeah.
all about context. You are not just getting a $100 million budget remake of the fan film The Hunt for Gollum.
Mm-hmm.
You are getting a fully fledged feature film, as you would expect, with giant creatures from Tolkien's imagination, and hopefully with the actors that we love. So there you go. I'm so excited.
Okay.
So
Me too.
Hunt for
Me too.
Gollum. Hunt for Gollum just got really exciting from that clip right there. But we've got another.
It's very exciting.
We've got a couple of more things to talk about, and changing gears from the Warner Brothers world of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Let's go to the small screen. Let's go.
Yes, let's. I mean, when you look at it
Amazon.
overall, Justin, it is so exciting to get a full new season of The Rings of Power and a full feature film animated for the War of the Rohirrim in the same year, with all the extra news on top of the Hunt for Gollum. That's just extra icing on the cake. This is a very exciting time.
This is a good question before we move on.
Very exciting time.
Cliff, Storyteller 011 in the chat room wants to know, is the word worms an alternative name for dragons? Or are they two separate creatures?
From my understanding, Wyrms, that is spelt with a Y, Wyrms, was used as a distinction between dragons that had no wings and had no flight. And if they did have wings, they were called drakes. So there's worms and drakes. That's,
And was
you know, that might
Smaug
be
the
a
last?
rather.
Was Smaug the last of the fire drakes?
He was. He was. He was the last of the fire drakes. Yes,
But
he was.
just the fire drakes, not the last of the drakes. Just the last of the fire drakes.
From what we understand, from at least from my knowledge, yes.
All right.
Yes, I think Smaug was the last of the fire drakes.
And by the way, we showed that tribute to Bernard Hill, the King of Rohan, at the top of the show. Guys, I was just thinking about it today.
Well, technically, he was considered the last great dragon of Middle Earth, but not the last fire drake. That there's nothing so
Smaug was.
specific about that. Sorry, yeah, Smaug. Okay,
I
go
was
ahead.
just thinking, you want to guarantee my attendance multiple times in the theaters for War of the Rohirrim this Christmas? You open the film with a tribute to Bernard Hill.
Oh my God, you're right. That's correct. That's your
You want me to
instincts are
cry in the
on
theater?
point.
You want me to cry in the theater? Play it again, Sam.
Your instincts are on point. However, the tribute should be a title card at the end of the film.
No, I want a full clip show. I want clips. I want to show the variety of his acting and his performance in the movies.
Oh, you're talking about a whole different thing. Okay, before the film starts. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
love that.
our friend, for our king, Bernard Hill.
Yep. I love that.
I'm getting
That'd be
goosebumps
great.
just thinking about sitting in a darkened theater and hearing the Rohan theme play and hearing him give his epic speech at the fields of Pelennor. Where is the horse and rider from Two Towers? I'm telling you, he is the heart and soul of that entire trilogy. He is the human connection. People think that the hobbits are the entry point to us identifying with Lord of the Rings, but it is King Theoden in the movies that is the humanity of the story. The breadth of humanity, losing his son.
To a large degree. Yeah, to a large degree.
The politics, where was Gondor? Trade, all this stuff. So I'm ready to cry in theaters. That's basically what I'm telling you, Warner Brothers. So
yeah.
Put it together. All right, moving on.
You know what? Yeah. There's, often we say Samwise. Samwise is the everyman. They do say a lot in analysis of the book that the doorway into understanding is Samwise.
We don't need to qualify that. I was just
no,
saying
but I agree
that
with you. I'm trying to say that with further thought, you are so right, because the vast spectrum of powerful human emotions and the grief and the struggle against despair is all represented through Theoden and his storyline. A great deal. You're quite right. It's very much thematically built towards him in the films. You're quite right. Yes.
And I think it should be at the beginning of the movie to remind people that 20 years ago, we were all in a theater when he fell on the field of battle after giving that heroic speech. 20 years ago this year, we were in that same darkened theater together as a fandom. So I think that needs to be at the front of the movie, kind of as it's acting as a flashback. Hey, here's what happened 20 years ago that we all fell in love with.
And here's who these people are in the land of Rohan. And now we acknowledge and commemorate this performer and this creation of this part of the story. And now let's take you to these creatives and their new part of the story, looking back at a huge legendary chapter of what made Rohan Rohan. Yeah. So, I like that. I like that.
It's more
that
than just a
context
screen
is sweet.
At the
It's
credits.
sweet.
It's more than just a single screen at the credits. This is the emotional punch to put you in the right headspace of the story you're about to see. Because the little I know about the story of Helm Hammerhand, it's going to pack an emotional punch. All right,
yes,
moving on.
I agree very much.
We've got other news to talk about because there's
Let's
so
bring
much
the
Lord of the
news.
Rings going on.
Give me some news.
Keep
Give me
going.
some
Well,
news.
I wanted to transition into talking about Rings of Power, but
Yes.
first, breaking news: Prime Video has announced a Blade Runner 2099. That's 50 years after 2049, the movie with
Oh, dear.
Ryan Gosling. Prime Video is making a TV sequel series of Blade Runner 2099.
Wow. A TV series.
Blade
Okay.
Runner
Wow.
2099, starring Michelle Yeoh, and they have announced that the premiere, the pilot is going to be directed by the same guy that did the pilot to Shogun, one of the best TV
Ooh.
shows on television. I've been singing its praises since February. You should all watch Shogun. It's going to win a bunch of awards. It really is the best show that was on TV this year. Shogun is everything that I want out of a TV show. And Amazon has hired the director of the pilot and several
Shogun.
episodes of Shogun to now direct the Blade Runner series.
Yes. Also keep in mind that a couple of those episodes of Shogun were directed by Rings of Power alumni.
Charlotte Ramstrom.
Alumnus is singular, right?
Right.
Forgive my bad Latin roots.
And Michael
But yeah.
Green, and then the writer of this Blade Runner 2099 show is Michael Green, who co-wrote 2049, the movie, and he also created Blue Eye Samurai, one of my favorite animated shows of the last year. Cliff, did you watch
Oh.
Blue Eyed Samurai?
Rabidly. I inhaled it. I loved it. I showed it to friends who were cynical, and then they loved it. It's such a great show.
So, folks,
such a
Amazon
great show.
Prime has hired the creator of Blue Eyed Samurai, one of our favorite shows of the last year, and the director of Shogun, one of my favorite shows of the last year, to do a Prime Video. The reason I bring this up is because, as Cliff just hinted at, Amazon Prime Video loves to share resources between their shows. There is a chance now that the writer of Blue Eyed Samurai, the creator of Blue Eyed Samurai, and the director of Shogun is now in the Prime Video family, that puts them in the game to possibly collaborating with McPain for season 3 of Rings of Power. And this has me more excited than I could possibly imagine. Two of my favorite shows of the last year are suddenly in the Prime Video family. Two of my favorite filmmakers of the last year are now in the Prime Video family. So as soon as they're done with Blade Runner, put them on Rings of Power, please.
Wow. But if Blade Runner 2099 takes off, then they might be busy for a few years. So we'll see.
We'll see.
But yeah, I think that's very exciting. I'm excited. Very excited. Oh, cool.
So other Rings of Power news. You might know this guy, Rahul Kohli. He is in Midnight Mass. He has been in many Mike Flanagan TV series. I think he's been in 3 or 4 Mike Flanagan Netflix horror series. Mike Flanagan, of course, is also at Prime Video now. Mike Flanagan moved from Netflix. He is now in the Prime Video family. We do not know exactly what he's doing. I think he's hinted at some stuff. But we want to talk about Rahul Kohli, one of my favorite actors. Here's him without his beard. And Cliff, do you remember?
He's awesome.
4 years ago, when you and I were fan casting what young Isildur could be cast as, and we said possibly Dev Patel from The Green Knight, or this guy Rahul Kohli.
Yes,
he was on our short list of actors to play Aragorn's ancestor.
Agreed.
Well, what did he post today, Cliff? You sent this to me.
I did. Well, the thing is that he was talking about leaving his acting for a while, and leaving acting roles that he had been given because he wants to dedicate his time to other significant uh, cultural and political affairs, specifically his efforts to protest the war in the Middle East. And he actually said, I don't want there to be any confusion about the fact that I've given up a role in Fantastic Four, because evidently, from what I understand, he gave up a role in Fantastic Four to dedicate himself to a much more personal and cultural motivated thing for himself. And he said in this additional item that I sent you that he had other roles over the years that he had gotten close to getting, but had left behind. And he said it's not such a big deal. And he was trying to tell people, don't make such a big deal out of it instead of misunderstanding what I'm really doing. He said, everyone was hanging on my every word this weekend and spreading it like crazy when it was about that fantastic forecasting. So, with that in mind, civilians are being exterminated in Rafah right now. Many of them are children. Over 35,000 Palestinians have been killed since October. This is not retaliation. This is genocide. Did you know that I also auditioned and failed for The Rings of Power and Deadpool and Chris Nolan's film Tenet? And I also turned down an audition for Morbius. And I was really close to being cast in A Star is Born, but lost it in the final stretch. So don't be selective now. Spread the whole version of the story, the entire context. And that's what he was talking about. His main interest is clarifying the air about what's important to him as a worker in the performing arts, as an artist. And he really did want to clear up the context. But at that time, we didn't know. We didn't know that he had auditioned for Rings of Power and had not gotten a role. So it's kind of
he didn't
funny.
walk away from Rings of Power. He just didn't get it. So
that's right. He didn't walk away from it.
So
That's
Cliff,
correct.
Our fan casting,
Was pretty close. Pretty darn close.
Pretty darn close. I mean, it was
Yes.
almost on the money.
Yes.
So confirmed
Agreed.
by the man himself on Instagram that
Yes.
Rahul Kohli auditioned and nearly got a major role in Rings of Power, and the major role that I think he could have played is young Isildur.
Probably because there's not too far. I mean, he's a little bit older. He's a little bit older. But yeah, still he could play a young.
You shave the beard. I think. I mean.
And he loses 15 years. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you know what? There's at least the man is motivated by the taste of his own conscience, and I respect him so much for that. It is our own conscience and the voice within, our internal moral compass that guides us. And, there are those who live on matters of faith, and there are those who live on matters of their own internal heart. And in some cases, it's a beautiful blend of both. So I totally get it, and I understand. But he just wanted to narrow down the scope of the conversation so that people wouldn't, walk away thinking the wrong things. But
and I also,
yeah,
and we should also mention
I would welcome him back into Middle Earth in any role whatsoever.
Yeah,
I would
Amazon,
welcome him
what are you waiting for? Amazon, please call him back, put him in the show.
I would welcome him
the
back.
star power. This is the star power that the show desperately needs. It needs an anchor of actors and actresses that fans can embrace, that can get a hold of, that no matter what your feelings on the show are, you're going to tune in because you like the guy. And I like this guy. And he was on our short list. And one of the reasons he was on our short list for Isildur is one of the complaints from book purists when Viggo Mortensen was cast was Viggo was totally the wrong type of person. First off, Aragorn's and his lineage do not have stubble beards. Do not have stubble. They are clean shaven. Secondly, we have talked many times that Tolkien probably built the archetype of Aragorn and Isildur off Middle Eastern archetypes of myth. And so, in some ways, Ralph Bakshi's Aragorn is closer to what Tolkien envisioned than the Danish Argentinian actor Viggo Mortensen. So all I'm saying is this guy fits the profile for the line of Aragorn and Isildur. Could he still play
He could.
a family member? Could Prime Video add family members to Isildur's lineage?
They could. A lot of people in the chat also have good instincts in suggesting that he could be Kamul, the Easterling, who would receive a ring of power for mortal men.
That is a huge role.
That's a big role. Kamul,
That is
the
a
Easterling.
huge role.
Could
Please
be really cool,
call
though.
him back. Prime, please call him
Yes.
back. So that was it. That was a huge get. Again, years ago, we're fan casting. We're like, these are the people, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad someone was listening to fans and just inviting him to audition. It's a bummer that he didn't. Get
I have a feeling if we're going into season 2 of Rings of Power,
I see you.
Hey, hello there. Nice to see you. New Beta, Do Beta is here with us. And yeah, we're a couple of big nerds. Thank you. Welcome
I'm
to
a
the
big
show.
nerd for Rahul Kohli, and I really want him in Rings of Power. And if he auditioned, give him a role.
I've got an idea. It's good to see you, sir. Welcome to our little chat. And guess what? I've got a weird instinctual feeling because we're going to the lands of Rune. We're going to the eastern lands of Rune in season 2 of Rings of Power, which is all kinds of cool and exciting. But that probably means that Kamul the Easterling has already been cast and has already been filmed as a full character. Probably.
We'll
Probably.
see. We'll see. Again, we don't know. They've been super secret on the characters again. You know, one of the things that I don't think went over very well last time, but we'll see.
Well, we know who Sam Hazeldine is for sure, but we don't know all the other actors and all the other roles that are coming out. But yeah,
man, it is 6:30. Cliff, did you want to get into this?
It is 6:30 already. Do you believe that?
Do you have time, Cliff? Should we get into the George R. R. Martin thing just real quick?
Real quick. Well,
all right.
Yes, we should get into it real quick, and that's because George R. R. Martin.
Right. Yeah, I was just looking for yes or no, but before we get there,
he is who he is, right?
Yes. So
yes.
we've got some setup because a lot of people are talking about George R. R. Martin. But before we get there, I want to let you know that we told you about the collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien with 1,000. This is the first time all of Tolkien's poetry has been put together in one volume. In the last week, it has been put up for pre-order. You can pre-order it now at Amazon.com. The collected poems of J.R.R. Tolkien releases September 17th. It is $112. It is a 3-book volume. It is a 3-volume set.
That's not bad for a 3-volume It's 3-volume hardcover. That's not bad for 3-volume hardcover.
It's wonderful. It's got how many? It had something like 50 or 100 new poems that have never been published ever. I mean, we did a whole show on it. You can go to theonering.net on YouTube and find that old episode from a couple months ago when we first announced this. But this was just put up for order. And speaking of other things to buy, Happy Hobbit Kelly just texted me that Black Milk Clothing, who is an official licensee of Middle Earth licenses, Embracer, has restocked their Lord of the Rings stuff. And so this Arwen Undomil dress, let me bring it up full screen, is back in stock in all sizes. Stunning Arwen dress. You need this. You want it. I mean,
you need this and you want it, ladies. You want this dress.
This is great. Incredible Arwen dress. It is.
I like those
in
details.
Stock.
That's nice.
You will want to wear this at whatever Comic-Con parties might be coming up this July. We don't have any other information other than you can. There will be reasons to wear this dress. So that is back in stock now at
nice
at Black Milk Clothing.
That's cool.
There was something else.
I guess that means the license has been renewed for some of this merch, right? Hmm.
Yeah,
It's probably what that means.
So the license was renewed, and they brought they brought some of the Lord of the Rings stuff back. There was this. I wish, again, Black Milk Clothing makes clothing for women, but look at this jacket. Why can't they make a One Ring blazer for men? I need this jacket. Oh, look, this is out of stock real quick.
Yeah.
There's only size 8 left, but look at the lining on this One Ring blazer, women's blazer. You absolutely need this. You could wear this anywhere. This is incredible detail, officially licensed, embroidered on the front pocket. Look at that ring verse. I love this blazer. I wish there was a men's cut. Just
yeah,
incredible.
I do too. A men's cut blazer is definitely what we need for that. We really do.
All right. Well, all right, moving on. A lot of talk about George R.R. Martin today.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to bring this up because in a brand new blog post from this weekend called The Adaptation Tango. Yes, George R.R. Martin has his own website called at georgerrmartin.com, kind of like McKellen.com.
Yeah.
He talks, I mean, it's a big long post, but he basically, we were talking about
It's
Shogun.
not that long.
We were talking about Shogun, and he just watched Shogun, and he says, acting, directing, set design, costume, it's all splendid here, along with the writing. And in this blog post, George R.R. Martin, the writer of Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, the whole book series, basically says that Shogun is as faithful an adaptation to its source book as there has ever been. And he goes on to say he's talked with Neil Gaiman about how Hollywood does not seem to respect source material like they have with Shogun. And I think this is what why Shogun is so wonderful. Let me see if I can bring this up. It says J.R.R. Tolkien, Mark Twain, Jane Austen, or well, anyone, no matter how major a writer is, no matter how great the book, there always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do better, eager to take this story and quote unquote improve on it. Quote, the book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story.
I suppose you think that was
own.
very clever. Right? Sorry.
George R. R. Martin then says, they make the story their own. And then he says, they never make it better. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse.
Mm-hmm.
So, out of George R. R. Martin's love for Shogun's fidelity to the book,
he ended up slamming David Benioff and D.B. Weiss and the team that made, and not ironically, he's making maybe a little side commentary, slamming, the way that his own television show for Game of Thrones finished.
Not just that, he is
not just
talking
that.
about Stan Lee, Charles Dickens, Ian Fleming,
Ursula K. Le Guin,
Roald Dahl, J.R.R.
he's talking about them all.
Tolkien, Mark Twain.
Yep.
He says Hollywood gets the rights to all of these authors, including Tolkien, and someone is on hand who thinks he can do better and is eager to take this story and improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film. As if they make up the story on their own, but they never make it better. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse.
My goodness.
Cliff, is this how should we think about this? Again, we talked about the show at the beginning as we're trying to give context to how you might absorb this news, since all the internet wants to talk about it today. Basically, George R. R. Martin, who has firsthand experience on adaptations, good and bad, he just watched Shogun. He loved it. He loved the book. He loves that the show maintained fidelity to the book. And I can only remember, Cliff, what have you been saying for 5 years? Hashtag fidelity to Tolkien.
Yeah. Hmm.
Is that what
yeah,
he's saying right here?
I think it's possible that hashtag that we thought up got compromised at some point along the way. But yes, I guess I know exactly what you mean. Um, he's he's making a trenchant observation that the people who should be most mindful of what they're doing when they're making an adaptation of a great author, is that it is not their job to replace or make improvements upon what the great author has done. He's reminding everybody that their job is to make an excellent adaptation that crystallizes and brings forward the best elements of the book, but not to try to, as he uses in his own words, quote, make it your own, unquote. He's making a cautionary statement about those people who think that they can improve upon a classic.
And Cliff, do you feel like the Sandman TV show had a high fidelity to its source material, or were they able to break away from the source material to fit the medium of television?
I think that they made some very necessary changes in their Netflix adaptation of the Sandman comic book, but the reason why they succeeded so very much is because they didn't try to outdo Neil Gaiman. They didn't try to outdo him or outpace him or outperform his imagination. They kept inside the wheelhouse. They kept very much inside the wheelhouse. And what was most successful about it, really, was that they introduced dark fantasy and horror concepts together at the same time that overlapped. Dark fantasy, horror, underwritten by every mythological tale or god or goddess or deity from any folklore or any mythology that the world has ever had, all underpinned by that. A vast tapestry of fantasy. And they reined it in, kept it focused on the characters, and it was exceptionally well done. The Sandman was exceptionally well done as an adaptation,
And so
probably
was The
because they did
Witcher.
not try to outdo what Neil Gaiman did. They tried to present the best storylines and characters and world building that Neil did, but they didn't try to
And
make
look,
it their own.
someone pulled up this old interview from years ago from the creator of The Witcher, who said, who was someone was posting this basically to validate George R. R. Martin's new comments, saying the Witcher author says they're almost always worse, which is what George R. R. Martin would say. I would argue that the Witcher video game adaptations were incredible, even if they weren't loyal to the book. The Witcher games were amazing, and the TV show has been fun. Like, I got sucked in with the Henry Cavill show, and now they've recasted The Witcher. I'm on board. I'm okay. Those shows, I'm just going in for fun. The game was fun, so I'm going in for fun on the show. And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
But Tolkien did leave room for other minds and hands to make all
very
these
much so.
adaptations.
Of course.
And then coincidentally, and I don't know if this is related. I sent this to you earlier, Cliff, and I don't know if this is a proper connection. But coincidentally, at the same time that George R. R. Martin was making these comments on adaptations, Cory Doctorow, friend of the show, Cory Doctorow, talked about a little trick that authors make, and I wanted to bring this up specifically for this audience, because
I think that's a fascinating point. I'm glad you brought this up. Yes,
because to The Witcher's author point and to George R. R. Martin's point, 99.9% of the time, the adaptations aren't as good as the original. They want to rewrite and make it better, or they want, but you just have to. There are tricks to the trade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Cory Doctorow posted this long thread. It's like 50 tweets, but I just wanted to point out one of my favorite nuggets of writing advice. Bring this up. Comes from Manor Madhouse. Jim, a Navy vet with an encyclopedic knowledge of gun lore, like boom, boom, guns, explained to a group of non-gun people how to write guns without getting derided by other gun people. Just add the word modified.
Modified.
And it took me a couple times to understand what he was saying. Basically, Jim, a Navy vet who's familiar with guns, and he's also an accomplished writer, was telling other writers, here's how to write guns into your story, into your show, into your book, into your comedy act, into your teleplay. How to write guns into your story without getting derided by people who know guns. And
by people who know better than you, right? By people who technically know more details than you. Yeah,
or
I
think
get it.
they know better.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said, just add the word modified. As in, her modified AR-15 kicked against her shoulder. She squeezed the trigger, but she held it steady on the car door, watching it disintegrate into a splatter of bullet holes. Jim's big idea was that gun people couldn't help but chew away at the verisimilitude of your fictional guns. Their brains would automatically latch onto them and try to find the errors. And Cliff, isn't that exactly what happened with Lord of the Rings?
That's what happens to the hardcore fans who think that they know all the deets better than anyone, and then they start to fine thread into it and deconstruct everything based upon little nibbly details.
And I'm not just talking about Rings of Power. This also happened 20
You're talking
years
about
ago.
What happened 20 odd years ago when first conversations were coming out about Peter Jackson's early
Thanks,
work
Robin.
on the production.
Good to see you in the chat room. Thanks for
Thank you,
everybody
Robin.
staying for an extra long conversation. But we really wanted to let you guys know about this because we are all guilty of this here on this show.
Indeed.
These hosts, this community, this Discord, the subreddit, everybody is guilty of both on the Peter Jackson movies and on Rings of Power because it's the newest thing. And I'm sure it's going to happen again on War of the Rohirrim and Hunt for Gollum and Season 2 Rings of Power. But we need to reset our expectations and how we act because he is right on the money here. Gun people couldn't help but chew away at the verisimilitude of your fictional guns. Their brains would automatically latch onto them and try to find the errors in your writing about the guns that they think they're an expert on.
Yep.
And that's what we did with Lord of the Rings.
That's what a lot of fans do in a lot of fandoms. That happens in a lot of fandoms. Definitely. It even happened when Peter Morgan was making The Crown, and all these people who know about the House of Windsor and the history of the royals were coming down on the playwright and saying, no, you got all those details wrong. We know better than you. So yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah.
So he continues, the word modified, using the word modified, hijacked that fan impulse and turned it into the writer's advantage. A gun person's imagination gnaws at the word modified, spinning up the cleverest possible explanation for how the gun in question could behave as depicted. This is what he's saying here is by telling the audience this is modified, just using that word, the creative energy is spent by the fans, is spent not proving you wrong now. It is spent, the creative energy is now spent on the fans' side to come up with the cleverest solution to fit the agenda.
And then just start spinning the wheels in the mind space of the fans. It just starts spinning the wheels and spinning their wheels. That's
in other words, the gun person's impulse to one up the writer by demonstrating their superior knowledge becomes an impulse to impart that superior knowledge to the writer, as modified puts the expert and the liar on the same team. Not the liar, the fan, on the same team, and conscripts the expert into fleshing out the lies.
Exactly.
Writing is lying, storytelling is genuinely weird. So, this was interesting to come out today in the wake of, at the same time as George R. R. Martin saying, don't change
because this dynamic is about a famous author making observations about how adaptations can immediately go south because somebody's trying to make it their own. And this Cory Doctorow, writer-director, he's actually saying, look, if you want to get people off of your back, there are writing tricks that allow you to have that space, that nebulous space where favor you can favor the mental approach of some of your audience because they're going to want to dig and dig and dig into the details of your world building, into the details of your magic system. Is it hard magic rules or soft? What is the cosmology behind this world building? All that stuff. And that is how fantasy nerds are. It's exactly how we are.
So Cliff, the chat room is exactly where I need them to be. So I need to ask you, Cliff, how would Rings of Power fared if they had somehow communicated this isn't Mithril, this is modified Mithril?
Yeah, well, that's what someone in the chat just said. Yeah, exactly.
But
well,
how do you communicate that? Modified Mithril, that feels, I don't know, it's too modern of a term. But a better writer than me could come up with some language to communicate. This isn't, and I believe there were some interviews after the show came out where the McPain, the showrunner, kind of said something along the lines of, this ain't your grandfather's Lord of the Rings. And it came across wrong. But and it came across as a slap in the face to fans. But I think this is what they were trying to get at.
Yeah, I would more believe, and I would be much more generous in my interpretation, that they're trying to get at the idea of this is an approach to writing that allows so much more in between the lines. It allows so much more in between the lines.
So Wheatbix says, but it can't be modified Mithril. It is the conception of Mithril and Rings of Power that is different. See, that's my whole point. You can't.
I see.
Like anyone, any gun nut, any gun owner, gun aficionado knows how a gun works, knows every little detail, probably practices taking guns apart and putting them back together, like like they're taught in training, military training, right? In boot camp.
Yep.
Like people know their guns inside and out. They should, and gun owners should know their guns inside and out.
My friends who do paintball out in the north edge of the San Fernando Valley, they have a military background. And they take their training and they modify their paintball guns so they can get more paintballs out and hit targets faster. They literally take brilliant technical knowledge and military training and put it into their recreational lives when they go to do paintballing. So yes, it's true.
So if Ian Fleming, if a writer, if a storyteller, if a show wants to do something with a gun that is not physically possible, that any right-brained person can say, you can't do that with that gun. That paintball gun is not a fully automatic rifle with a scope. You have if you use the word modify, you communicate to the fan, hey, don't think about the practical logistics of this not working. It's modified. Think of all the ways that could work.
Yeah, the other ways when it might. Yeah, right. I get that. Well, as people in the chat have correctly identified, Elrond's use of the word apocryphal was, and like Laswin, you're so awesome. Laswin says, I'm not sure any other language is needed. Elrond called it an apocryphal story. That might have been the showrunner's attempt to say, this is a different take on Mithril. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So, intriguing.
I wonder if the Mithril story would have landed in this context better if Elrond had stated that before that story was told. If whoever was telling the story was like, you know, I've heard the craziest thing about this stuff. I don't believe it's true, but supposedly there was a big fight
Right.
and then a lightning bolt came down, and I don't know. But it's the way that the narrative is delivered that was a big turnoff to fans. And so saying, oh, that's apocryphal like an hour later, probably not the best way to execute it. Again, Dr. Rose says you have
I thought
to
he
say
said
it up
right
front.
before it was mentioned. I thought that Elrond says that's apocryphal right before we get the whole flashback thing into what the story was.
Does
So
he?
I might be wrong. Yeah,
I think
I'm pretty sure he says it right before.
I think
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was after. I don't know, but
I think it was
yeah,
at the moment of the telling.
Doctorow here
Yeah.
basically says you have to communicate that this story is modified. Whatever the thing is that you're changing, you have to
Yeah.
communicate it up front that it's modified. Can't do it after the fact because they're going to roast you with facts and lore. So you need to communicate first and foremost. The first word that you need to say is, this story is probably a lie, but I'm going to tell you. The other thing that I think didn't work in the way Rings of Power did that is they put all of that energy in animating a beautiful piece of lore. So just the act of creating a beautiful animation and all that stuff elevated the importance and the validity of that apocryphal story.
Yep.
Like, if it really was apocryphal, they wouldn't have animated it. He would have maybe looked in a book, turned a page, and say, yeah, that never happened. But by them, it's kind of like with when the
see.
Harry Potter, the last Harry Potter movie, when they tell the animated story of the triangle and the three things, the wand, and
the three brothers, and the Deathly Hallows. Yeah,
right,
and that
yeah.
was a fantastic bit of silhouette animation. It was fantastic.
So
it was great.
Cory Doctorow has a point here, which is fans are willing to put fans are always going to put the energy into responding to your creative output, whether it's a book or a movie or a show.
Yeah.
Fans are just going to do it. Their muscle reflex is to tell you that's wrong. That's not how it's done. And good writers, excellent writers, know the tricks to communicate to the fans, hey,
yes,
we know it's wrong, but go along with us, you know. And I think Peter Jackson got away with a lot of stuff because he did exactly what Cory Doctorow says right here. Peter Jackson told us up front, ahead of the movies, in the behind the scenes DVDs, every chance he got, he said, yeah, we took Glorfindel out. Yeah, we know Arwen didn't save Frodo. Yeah, we know, like we had to move that up. Yeah, we brought the elves to Helm's Deep. But, you know, go along with us because we think you're going to have a good time. And here's why we did it. Peter Jackson explained his changes. And that's what Cory Doctorow is saying. It's like, using the word modified, you're telling people, you're telling your audience, we're making changes here. Just come along the ride. And I feel like that did not happen on Rings of Power. Maybe because we didn't get behind the scenes videos at all. Maybe because they spread all these interviews out. I don't know.
Look, it might be a magnificent red herring. Following on with our chatters in the chat, Wheatbix says, that's why we say light speed or plasteel or blaster rifle and other such terms in science fiction. You add some modifier to it.
Right.
But if in the sci-fi world, the blaster rifle changes how it exists, that is different.
So call it something else.
Yeah.
I think the Rings of Power stuff would have worked if they didn't call it Mithril. Like, call it something else, and then maybe in season 3, the elves rename it Mithril.
Yep. Yeah. Call it something else. Yeah, that would have been interesting. Yeah.
So the interesting thing about this long Cory Doctorow thread, I think we all agree on the point he was making. Do you agree, Cliff? Do you agree with the points he was making?
Yeah, very much so, because it's a way to mentally include people instead of you pushing yourself into a corner as a writer and you've automatically excluded a bunch of people who are technically smarter than you. It is a interesting little shortcut ideology to help bring an intellectually rigorous audience closer to what you're trying to do instead of them feeling like, I need to correct you. You're full of poo-poo. I need to correct you now. Instead, they're saying, oh, so you're doing some kind of weird little mod. Okay, you've mod. It's a mod. It's done something weird. And then they think, what are all the ways that it could have become that? And then they start to join you on an imaginative journey. I totally understand what he's talking about. I totally get it.
The weird thing is,
I get it.
What triggered this post from Cory Doctorow, friend of the show, friend of the site, is he watched Furiosa, as we talked about at the top of the show. He went and watched Furiosa, and he didn't like it because over the last 10 years since Fury Road, he had created a mythology in his mind of how Furiosa lost her arm, what brought her to the Citadel, and what the green lush world that she came from looked like. He had imagined everything, and so he watched Furiosa, and they actually answered the question. And so Doctorow's point was, whatever was in my imagination, I liked more than what was on screen. And he's like, so he was saying some things don't need to be told. Like, leave enough room. The whole point of this thread was basically to creators and storytellers need to leave enough room for the audience to create the myth themselves. Don't explain how a lightsaber works. It just works. Don't explain how a blaster rifle works.
Not unless you explain lightsabers years and years and years later in an animated spin-off series. Then you can do that.
I should have said blaster rifle, because we don't know how blaster rifles work, right?
No, we've never learned how blaster rifles work in Star Wars, but we've learned a lot about kyber crystals.
And maybe we'll see that in the new Acolyte show that starts this week. So
that's right. Acolyte
anyway,
this week.
So Cory Doctorow did not like Furiosa because his imagination had filled in the gaps.
I enjoyed it.
And he was and so he looked at this, he wrote this thread because why don't I like Furiosa when everybody else does? And he's like, and so it was just interesting that you can get the fans on your side with talented, creative writing and storytelling. There are tricks of the trade. And in this thread, Cory talks about how a comedian sets up a joke because you, the audience, you're probably already at the punchline.
Yeah.
But you're waiting, like you're cycling through all of the punchlines as he's telling the joke. So is the punchline going to be less or more than what you're expecting? It's kind of how what happened with Rings of Power. We came in with all this enthusiasm and energy, and then did it deliver? I don't, you've seen, everybody's got their own review. So we need to take a step back, and the storytellers need to acknowledge that there are tricks of the trade to employ to turn the audience back into creative. Putting that energy where we want to tell you you're wrong, and putting that energy into telling you how it would work.
Yes. It completely changes the direction of the energy. Instead of it being like, you're really wrong, it could be like, well, maybe there's possibilities because of this. And that causes a different level of engagement. It's a different level of engagement entirely. And it says right here, Higgy Baby is reminding us that Caitlin, Tea with Tolkien, has just put up a meme that is actually within alignment of what we're talking about right here.
All right. Well,
we'll have to see. Let's see. Thanks, Higgy Baby, for telling us that. It's always nice to close the show with something from Caitlin. And we've had wonderful visits today from New Better Do Better. We've got he's just looking up the Tea with Tolkien meme. And we also had an interview clip from Matt, Nerd of the Rings, all here on the same show.
Let's
Huh?
see, let's
Oh,
let's
there
see,
it is.
let's see what she posted. But they were all them deceived, for another ring was made. Wait, is that the
Is that the one that is that the one?
no,
Is that the one you're talking about, Higgy baby?
Sauron ability singing mental illness DM'd you.
Oh, Tea with Rings of Power. Not her account, but
Oh.
the Tea with Rings of Power account. Okay, the other account.
Tea with Rings of Power.
Tea with Rings, which is, we must remind our audience, that is Caitlin's other active Rings of Power fan account with lots of great dialogue and memes and great fun energy. Very
Is
fun
it
energy.
Tea with Trop? Yeah, Tea with Trop.
Yep. It's Tea with Rings of Power. Is that it? When the Mithril got a Silmaril in it?
Maybe?
That might be it. Maybe it. When the Mithril got a Silmaril in it. Haha, maybe that's it. Well, I tell you what.
So yeah, in combination,
That's the one. Yeah.
conclusion, George Martin has a perspective and has a point that 99% of adaptations fail because they make it worse, and because there's someone in the room that says he can do better, he can take the story and improve on it.
Exactly.
And he tells people the book is the book, the film is the film. Then they make the story their own rather than stick to the book. And Martin's point is the best stuff sticks to the book. And that is and as we just said, there are ways to deviate from the source material, but you have to employ the tricks that Cory Doctorow explains here. And so I hope
absolutely.
we can appreciate all of that in totality.
In totality, because overall you do want to find ways to have intellectual rigor with your audience and bring them in their curiosity and the fact that they do have as much or more knowledge than you. The fans probably have more knowledge than all the people in the writer's room combined. So if you want to engage them at that level, then, that's an excellent breakdown from Mr. Doctorow. There are tricks and certain approaches to the writing that can allow for a more rigorous involvement instead of just disdain or, heaven forbid there should be contempt in the room, because, I greatly admire the efforts and the production quality of the Rings of Power. I have always said on this broadcast how much I really, really love the production design, the music and the show, the photography, the cinematography. And there's so much to recommend. There's so much to recommend for the show.
And look,
But,
speaking of recommend, again, you can see Viggo Mortensen and Anduril this weekend as his new movie hits theaters in select cities. It's called The Dead Don't Hurt. Look for it. The interview is on gqmagazine.co.uk. And Viggo Mortensen's The Dead Don't Hurt. He features a scene with the sword Anduril.
Anduril returning to silver screens.
And
Oh my
Viggo
gosh.
has said, give him a call, show him a script.
He has. And that's a great place to leave the show today. Hello, Prime Video. Hello, Prime Video. How you guys doing? There's a little phone call you can make right there. Pick up your phone. And you can call the people who represent Viggo and say, hey, what's up? And hey, new line. Same thing goes to, I know we've been saying this a long time to Prime Video. And now
Prime
I'll say
Video,
it's a new
call
line.
Rahul Kohli. New line,
Prime Video,
call
call Rahul
Viggo.
Kohli. But we've actually suggested that as a director, Viggo should come in and direct an episode or two for the Rings of Power. As much as I would say, hey, New Line Cinema, you pick up your phone and call the representation of Viggo and get him into the hunt for Gollum.
Andy,
both
Peter,
sides of that.
what are you waiting for? Call the man.
Get these directors in, yeah.
Just call
him
him.
in.
Just call him. Just put a
Who are you gonna
dart on the
call?
calendar.
Who are you gonna call? Viggo Mortensen. Okay.
All right. Well, we've
Bye-bye,
had a big
guys.
show. We've
great
just
show.
basically shown you that Hunt for Gollum could be bigger than we possibly imagined, with possible dragons and drakes and worms. We've explained why Ian McKellen is fit and fiddle to return as Gandalf. Why
Yes, he is.
the visual effects work of Planet of the Apes make it easier for Ian McKellen to act his ass off with this new technology. We've explained
Yes.
that Viggo is ready to jump back in. In fact, he's putting Anduril in his new movie. Man, we've just had so much news, and thank you for sticking with us for this extra long show.
Very good. Yeah, very, very good show. And thanks for the rigorous conversation and the news, and thank you for the analysis. This is theonering.net, Torn Tuesday. As usual, we're here to bring you all of the above, a breakdown of the headlines and the news and all the crazy, crazy stuff that's going on, because it never ends. The news cycle here in the J.R.R. Tolkien universe, it never ends. Point your browser to Amazon.com, get your copy of the published poetry of J.R.R. Tolkien in that 3-volume hardcover edition. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous. So excited about that. And much more to come. Just stick with us. And we'll see you here next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time for another episode of Torn Tuesday. And, I want to say thank you to all the people on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, everybody on all these platforms who's come to us. It is really lovely to have you as a faithful audience. Thank you again for being with us. Until next week, take good care of yourselves. Be cautious, be safe, and love one another. It's a big, beautiful world out there, and let's do our best, okay? You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at QuickBeam2000. And you can follow us, the entire website, at The One Ring Net. Just take out the dot, and you'll find us on all of our socials. Adios, everybody. Lovely to have you. Thanks, Higgy Baby, and Utaku Senpai, and Cecilia, and everybody. Daisy Kim, Anonymous Girl.
And Ona
Oh my God.
Kay.
Last
Love to see
one.
all of you.
Everyone,
Kristen.
Jen was in here. We had a whole universe of good people. And thanks again to New Beta, Do Beta. Check him out on TikTok because he's brilliant. That guy's brilliant. Okay? So we're off to the races. Good night, everybody. Have a safe week. We'll see you next Tuesday. As I love to say at the close of every show, good night and good luck. Or better yet, buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye-bye, everybody.
Big news next week.